Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Ron Anglin from Quite a Catch. Thank you. Enjoy our program.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour, je m'appelle Ron. Bienvenue des Jongleurs de Notre-Dame. Why are you looking like that, cameraman? You don't speak French? Something. I will do this program in English. What I've said is, good day. My name is Ron. Welcome to the Jongleur of Notre Dame. Now, first, let's tell you what a jongleur is, because a lot of kids are like, oh, that's just a juggler. Well, in the old days, a jongleur had three jobs. We used to sing songs, we would tell stories, and we would do tricks. Now, today, we're just known for doing tricks, but I'm going to try to do all three today and tell you the original story of the Jongleur de Notre Dame. Now, this story was written down by a man named Anatole France. It's been made into a movie. It has also been made into an opera, and it's one of my favorite stories. And it begins in France, hundreds of years ago, during the Dark Ages, and a little boy was named Jacques. He was an orphan boy. Now, before I continue my story, I want to play a game that the French people play called Jacques D. And it's just like Simon Says. So if I say Jacques D, that means Jack says in French. You do what I do. If I don't say Jacques D, don't do it. Ready to play?
Yeah.
Here we go. Jacques D, raise your hands. Put them back down. And you're both out. I'm going to give you another chance, Miss Laura. Jacques D, touch your nose. Jacques D, touch your ear. Jacques D, touch your chin. I got you on that one. This is your cheek. This is your chin. So that's the game that we play. And the story about the little boy, since he was an orphan, he was hungry. That means he had no parents, no one was providing for him, and he needed to have something to eat. So he traveled down to the open air market. That's where people got food in the days before the super Walmarts. And he saw a fruit and vegetable vendor. And he decided that he would sneak up and borrow an apple. Now in French, they say an apple is la pomme. He also saw and borrowed an orange. Do you know how they say orange in French?
Orange?
Orange. The orange. He also saw a lemon. That's how they say lemon.
Lemon?
No, it's citron. Not lemon. But if you add the word vert at the end, it means a green lemon, un citron vert, which is a lime. And if you say la pomme, which is an apple, and add the earth, la pomme de terre, that's a potato, an earth apple. So it's a very beautiful language. And now I'm going to show you what Jacques did with those three fruits. Because without the owner seeing him, he learned to juggle before and decided he would try juggling the fruits. Now we call this the cascade. We call this columns. We call this cheating. We call this pattern a shower, where it goes around in a circle. We call this playing soccer. Off the knee, off the elbow, off the head. Ow, I'm going to stop that one. This was called a reverse cascade. We'll throw it behind the back. We'll throw it on the back of the neck. Oh, I get a do-over. Take two. Try that one more time. See if we can get this one done. And I'm going to try to throw the apple on my head. That was my nose.
Oh.
Oh, need a hair up there. If I had hair, that trick would work. Try this one more time. I used to do that trick at SeaWorld, and I made 3 fish a day. Ooh, this is one of my favorites, so I call this crisscross applesauce. Now, Jacques gathered a crowd, and the vendor looked up and saw this little kid juggling his fruits and vegetables, and he's like, what are you doing? And Jacques' like, huh? He's like, put those down. But then he realized something. Jacques had attracted all these people to his stand. And so he looked at the little boy and he said, you know what? Keep doing that and you can have this apple. So Jacques found himself with a job and he became a better juggler as he got older. He stopped juggling just 3. He learned to juggle 4. So I'm going to show you how you juggle 4 balls. This is called a fountain. And I can juggle him in a circle. Would you like to see him go in a circle?
Yeah.
Do it the other way?
Yeah.
Okay. That's counterclockwise. All right. I'll try to do this looking at the disco ball. Do they have dances here?
We do.
Awesome. Here we go. 4 balls in a circle. Ta-da! So Jacques grew to be a man, and he traveled all over France. He became very famous as a jongleur. Now, one day, Jacques had a big crowd, and he decided that he would try to finish his show with 5. Now, 5 balls is hard. Most people take many, many months to learn it, and Jacques had gotten pretty good with it. So he got in front of the crowd and started juggling his 5 balls when he dropped. And you know what the crowd did? They yelled, boo, and they left. And Jacques was devastated because now his reputation as a great juggler was gone. And Jacques became poor again, just like when he was a little boy. And Jacques became old and a very sad man. One day during the wintertime, Jacques was walking through the streets of Paris and he didn't know where to go, but he saw the big church. Now, Notre Dame in French means our mother. And you may have heard in the news a year ago, the church of Notre Dame burned down, and that church was over 850 years old. And in about 4 more years, they hoped to have it rebuilt. But back in these days, it was a big church, and Jacques just fell down on the steps and went to sleep. He was cold, he was hungry, and the monks who lived there saw this destitute juggler on the steps, and they said, come in and we'll feed you. And they got Jacques to help them inside the church. So he polished things, he cleaned the floors, and then during the holiday season, he noticed people were bringing gifts, and they were placing them in a statue at the front of the church. It was a statue of the Mother Mary holding baby Jesus. Now, the statue was a very serious looking statue. So I want everybody to show me your serious face at home. No smiling. And Jacques looked at these gifts and he saw that there were food for the poor, clothing for the poor, and he was poor, but he wanted to give something. And he didn't have any money. So he thought, I can still juggle. I'm going to do my best trick for you, the Mother Mary. So what he did is he got a seesaw. In the circus, we call this a rollabola. And he placed it right in front of the statue. And then he got juggling clubs. Now, clubs are harder to juggle because you have to flip them and catch them on the skinny end. So before I get up here on this rollabola, let me warm up with some singles, some doubles, a triple. We'll throw one behind the back. We'll go under the leg. We'll do the double dip. Ow. Try that again. The double dip. There it is. We'll try the fancy flourish. And we have to be really careful, or we could be hurt. I'm not going to do that again. But what Jacques did is he got up on top of the rollabola and balanced precariously. and juggled at the same time and balanced. And the monks walked in and they yelled out, "Jacques, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Ah!" And he stopped. But then they all noticed and looked up. And the statue was now looking down on Jacques and smiling. And Jacques realized that he had given the best gift of all, and that was a gift of himself. Now, that's a wonderful fairy tale, and it has been written in a book that most libraries have by a man named Tommy DePaula. Sadly, we lost Tommy this past year, but he wrote and illustrated over 200 books. Helga is one of his more famous books, and the one that I'm talking about takes the legend of the Juggler of Notre Dame, moves it from France to Italy. He changes the little boy's name to Giovanni, and it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever seen. It's very lovely. But I will tell you, parents, I would not read this verbatim to your 3 and 4-year-old children, because the happy ending that I gave you here, which is the original tale, by the way, in the Disney movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, you see the character in the jester outfit that is based on the Festival of Fools, and it's a happy story, but Tommy loved the dramatic, and he changed the story at the end, and it's not quite as happy. So make sure your child is old enough to handle the ending, or change it back to the happy one. I learned it the hard way when I did it for a preschool. Don't want a bunch of crying preschoolers. Take my word. So I'm going to put this up and tell you that I am a modern day jongleur. I work all around the country. I work in children's hospitals for a group called Humorology Atlanta. And I tell stories, and I do songs, and I do a lot of tricks for children who are sick in the hospital. Right now, during these times, we're doing it over the phone with virtual visits. And I want to show you some of the things that we do in the hospital, or even virtually like I'm doing for you now. But this is our favorite thing to use in the hospital. These are soap bubbles. Now, when you play with soap bubbles, it's a lot of fun to blow and pop them. But when I got hired, they said, "You have to learn bubble tricks." And I said, "How?" They said, "Read the book." So here's the book. It's by Mr. Tom Noddy, N-O-D-D-Y. It's called Bubble Magic. And the first thing you read in chapter 1 is make sure you have a really good bubble solution. How do you make bubbles really cool? Well, you can thicken them by adding sugar. You don't have to use table sugar, but it will work. You can use this liquid sugar at the drugstore called glycerin, and that makes it thick to do some cool tricks. So I want to show you a few we do at the hospital. This is just regular bubbles. But if you go to a store like Starbucks, I call that $4 or $5, you can get a coffee stirrer. I got this from the lab at the hospital, but a tiny straw. And if you get a tiny straw, you can do the tiny bubbles. And my character at the hospital is called Dr. Tiny. And the reason why we blow these bubbles in the hospital is when children see a needle come in their way, they're like, "Ah!" And they make really tight muscles in the monster face, and it hurts a lot more to get a shot or to have an IV started. But when they see bubbles, they're like, "Ah!" And they breathe and they relax. And we have found that laughter truly is the best medicine. Let me put this away. And I'll show you one of my favorite tricks. If you lick your finger like this, just a little bit, and blow a medium-sized bubble, and poke it right in the middle, it squeaks. Oops, forgot to lick my finger. There you go. Oh, now I've got bubble juice all over my fingers. Hang on. Now, if you're really careful and squeeze it gently, watch what you can do. You can catch a bubble. Those are always fun. And if you wear cotton sleeves, like my tie-dye shirt, or a doctor coat to the hospital, You can bounce a bubble. Watch this. Boing. Boing. Dr. Gizmo on our team, he holds a record with 52 bounces of a single bubble. I know because I was in the room when he did it. It would have been more, but that's when I popped the bubble. He broke my record. But here's my favorite bubble trick. It is called the mommy bubble. Mommy! I'm okay. I'll try again. One of those days. Is this Monday? No, it's Tuesday, I think. When you see the bubble inside the bubble, if you blow a big bubble, oh look, bounce. And blow to the side of it, you can make lots of bubbles. This is called the multiplying bubble. There's 3. There we go. Hello. So, let me put this away and show you a couple of other things that we like to do in the hospital. And that is play music. Now, I never learned music as a child. 7 years ago, the leader of our team, his name is Vincenzo, sadly passed away. He was only 44, and we still miss him to this day. But he was our strongest musician. So after he passed, in his honor and in memory, we all decided to be more musical. And Dr. Okidoki handed me this and said, "It's time for you to learn this, Dr. Tiny." And I said, "I can't play music." He said, "Hush, read the book." And I found out that if you want to play music, a ukulele is a great instrument to start with, because it only has 4 strings. Banjos have 5, most guitars have 6, and a ukulele only has 4, and it makes it easier to do what are called chords. Now, do you know what a chord is? It's a car made by Honda. But if you play 3 notes together, they call that a chord, and out of the 4 that you need to learn, 2 of them only take 1 finger. You can play 1,000 songs if you know these 4 chords. So I'm going to put my finger on the bottom string right here and play now. That's a C chord. If I put my finger on the top string, that's an A minor. If I put my finger down on the second string there, that's an F. And if I put 3 fingers in a triangle, that's a G. If you know those 4 chords, you can play very simple songs like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I know another song. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I know another song. Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Now some of you may recognize that's the same song. I'm just doing different words. But that's a French tune, believe it or not, called a Vous dirigez, maman, which means in English, oh, you tell me, Mom. And when a little boy named Amadeus Mozart was walking around the streets, he heard that tune. Nobody knows who wrote it. It's anonymous. But as he got older, he wrote his variations on a Vous dirigez, maman, which is a very famous classical music piece. A poem was written 100 years later by a woman named Jane Addams. Had 5 verses, but that first verse everybody knows because it goes, Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And that became a very famous children's song. Now, I actually play that song for children who can't hear. You know how I do it? With sign language. I don't need my ukulele. But I'm going to teach you the first line. So here's how we say twinkle in ASL, American Sign Language. Take your fingers out here and go like that. That's a twinkle. Then, if you take your hand out wide and come to your belly button, that means little. And to say star, take your pointer fingers and point to all the stars. Now don't point down because that means socks, and you don't want to twinkle socks. That's hard to get out. So we're going to sing the first line together in sign language. Ready? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And that's how we are able to sing for children who can't hear. But children who can't hear many times can still feel the vibrations. So we beat on the beds, we stomp our feet, we sing really loud, and they enjoy it as well. I want to show you a couple more songs that you can play on a ukulele using those 4 chords. In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. You can play. Sometimes in our life, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. It's the same chords. There's so many songs that use those same chords, but I want to tell you a story, and I can tell this story because it's in a book. The book is called Beyond the Red Nose. It was published last year by my friend in Texas named Tiffany Riley, and she collected stories. And this story is about a little girl in my hometown whose name is Dakota. And Dakota was in an accident when she was 2 years old. It was a very bad car accident. Sadly, her mother did not survive, and she had a lot of brain damage. Her skull was fractured, and her grandmother takes care of her today. She's her caretaker. She's also a nurse, so she can help her, and she has trouble speaking. She can say a lot of words now, but she's had to really struggle to learn how to talk, and she can't walk to this day. She's in a wheelchair, but she goes to the hospital a lot, and I'll never forget that I got a message one day that Dakota was in the hospital, go visit her. So when I went to the ICU where she was, the nurse stopped me and said, "Where are you going, clown?" I said, "I want to visit Dakota." "You can't go in there." I said, "Why?" "She's in a coma." Now, a coma is a very deep sleep, and it can last for a long time. I said, "I know the grandmother. Can I go in anyway?" They said, "Okay." So I went in, and the grandmother hugged me. She said, "Please play that song for Dakota. I don't know if she could hear it, but I want you to play it." And I did. And I know that her favorite song is one that uses C and G. How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail. Now I played that song because she asked me, and they went to the hospital for a 2-day procedure, and it turned into a 4-month stay. So I got to visit Dakota several times, and she came out of the coma. She started having the surgeries, and pretty soon she was back sitting up and smiling. And I'll never forget the last day that we got to go in to visit her. I went with Dr. Mimi, and we were both learning to play the ukulele. We knew those 4 chords, and I played a song, and Dr. Mimi played a song, and before we left, Dakota raised one finger and said, "One." And I looked at the grandmother, and she said, "Do you know another song?" And I'm thinking, I know a lot of songs with C, F, and G, but I couldn't think of anything. But the only song that came to my brain for some reason was by Justin Bieber. Now, you play songs by Justin Bieber lately. Some people laugh, some people like them, but ordinarily they're not for little kids. But it was all I knew. So I started singing this song. Are we an item? Girl, you're playing. We're just friends. What are you saying? That there's another light in my eyes. My first love broke my heart for the first time. And you know what? Dakota knows that song. And she knows how to say the word baby. So when I got to the chorus, she started singing, "Baby, baby, baby, oh. Baby, 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 no." And when I did this part, Luda, when I was 13, I had my first love. There was nobody that could pay my baby, nobody came with 20, so I could never come above. She couldn't do that part. But she sang "Baby, Baby" word for word. And at the end of the song, her grandmother looked at me and she said, "How did you know her other favorite song?" I didn't. But that's how it works in the hospital sometimes. And we're there to serve. We're there to help children get through some scary times. And I never thought when I was a kid that I would play music. But now I do. And it's because I learned it from reading a book and from practicing. So let me encourage you to learn music as a child, because when you get older, it gets harder to learn anything. So I'm going to put this away and tell you that one of my favorite tricks to do is to play with blocks. Now these are wooden blocks. And every time I do these tricks, children accuse me of cheating. They're like, "You're using magnets." Well, I'm not. I'm pushing on the pink box, and I bend my knees to move the box around. When I was a kid, I got a book called Box Manipulation and Manipulative Miscellanea by Reginald Bacon, and he told me that if you want to do these tricks, bend your knees, and that gives you a lot of time. And it makes it a lot easier than bending your back or raising your arms up and down. So this is called box manipulation. This trick is called a takeout. And this trick is called a typewriter. And kids today don't know what a typewriter is. And when I say, you guys don't know what a typewriter is, you know what they say? Okay, boomer. Well, it's not a keyboard. You can't control, alternate, delete a typewriter. We call this a typewriter. Watch what I do with the green box. Don't watch what I did with the blue box. I get another do-over. This is making it so much fun. What are you looking at? I got it. I'm going to try it with a pink box. And now I'm going to be real fancy with the blue box. This is called a type over. Now I'm going to do my basketball player impression. Sweet Georgia Brown. And now I'd like to show you my impression of the seal again. First time I did that, a little girl come up and she says, "Hey, Mr. Juggler, you didn't look like a seal." I said, "Really?" She said, "You look more like a walrus." And now the hardest trick I do, around the world with the green box. If you blink, you're going to miss it. If you close your eyes, it looks even better. That worked for once. Now, since 3 boxes went so well, I'd like to attempt the 9-box trick. Now, just to keep me honest, I'm going to ask you all to help me count the boxes when it goes to the right hand to the left hand. Ready? Here we go.
1.
Let's do it all together now.
1, 2,
The first 2 are easy.
3, 4, 5.
5. Thank you.
7, 8, 9.
Some people don't like that one. Oh, so hard. Wrist is thing with me. Let me back up just a little bit. That wasn't the trick. That was just counting the boxes. Now we're going to try the trick. So close. You can fix this in editing, right? Ta-da! Sounds like I'm at a golf tournament. So I'm going to show you one more trick. This is my favorite toy. This is called a Chinese yo-yo. And I got this for Christmas when I was 8 years old. And the paper that came with it said, throw it in the air and have fun. So let me show you how I used to play with this. Because I am right-handed, I used to throw it from my right side to my left side. And years ago, when I joined the Atlanta Jugglers, one of them walked over and said, dude, why are you throwing your yo-yo backwards? Well, look what happened to the spin. He said, didn't you read the book? I said, they wrote a book about this? I didn't know. He said, and he let me borrow it. It's by Todd Strong. It's called the Diablo book. That's a fancy name for a Chinese yo-yo. And I read in the book that I did this wrong for 27 years. I had to turn things around. So watch what happens if I throw it from left to right. You can tell from the spots that since it's rolling downhill, the gravity and friction are helping me. It's getting the yo-yo to go faster and faster. And now, I learned that if once it goes really fast, I can do a trick like this. This is called the elevator, going up. So once I learned the right way from reading a book, it opened the world for me. And for the last 20 years, I have gone into 31 states now. I've done around 8,000 shows, and I want to show you some of my Chinese yo-yo tricks that I learned with lots of practice. We'll get it going again, and I'll show you one we call Walk the Dog. This one we call Walk the Cat. Never mind. This one's called a double cat's cradle. Speaking of cats. This one is called the trampoline. Boing, 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 boing. I can go around the arm. Let go of the stick. This is the combination trick. Over the shoulder, through the coffee grinder, up to the cradle, and out. This is called the triple trapeze. 1, 2, 3. To the flying trapeze. This one is called the umbrella. Ella, Ella, hey, hey, hey. This one is called Time Flies When You're Having Fun. Looks like a clock going really fast. And now I'm going to try the most dangerous trick of all. But don't worry, kids at home, it's not dangerous for you. When it works, it's called the whip catch. When it doesn't, it's just called the whip. Ta-da! Thank you. Now, once I learned to do one yo-yo, I thought it would be fun to learn to do two. And so, from reading a book, I found out how you keep these things in line and keep them corrected. And I've bothered my dad and my sister and my son and anybody in my family that would throw the second yo-yo in for me as I learned this. And it took me many months. But once I learned it, I figured out how to start it by myself. So I taught him to ride the Ferris wheel. Throw one high, catch one on the stick, drop it back in. This is called a double knee stall. Throw it over to the left, catch it on the right. Now we're going to try to do around the world between the arms. That was one of them. We'll give that one more try. There it is. And finally, we'll close with what we call a hyperloop. So how about a hand for 2 yo-yos? Both of you. Thank you. And what you just saw me do, kids, when I work in the hospital, I can't do that trick safely. At least that's what security told me. So I take the yo-yo, and what I do with it is I wrap it around my neck like this. And when a child sees it, they're like, that's a funny looking bow tie. What do you do with that? I say, well, I can tie the impossible knot. Now you have to remember that a lot of the patients that I visit in the hospital are fighting cancer, things like that. And they're very weak sometimes because they spent a long time in that bed. So this is what I do. I tell them that the impossible knot looks like this. And to prove that it can't be untied, I get my clown partner to grab the yo-yo and pull on it. A lot of times I'll get somebody to do it, but we can't do it today. See? But then when I hand it to the kid, it comes right off. And they're like, oh, I got your yo-yo. And they laugh. And I found out that it empowers the child because I learned a long time ago, just like the Juggler de Notre Dame learned many, many years ago, it's not about me, it's about everybody else. Life is about finding your gift. And once you find it, give it away. Give it to anybody that you can. And I hope that you enjoy the story of the Juggler de Notre Dame. I want to thank Linebaugh for letting me come, and I'll turn it back over to Miss Laura. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. See you later. Have a great summer. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining Ron here at the Rutherford County Library System. Be sure to check him out at Quite a Catch and look for more programs on Facebook and our YouTube videos. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.